Hello everyone and welcome to our new series, which we are going to basically examine the chess life, personal life, and interesting other stories involving some of the greatest players in chess history. We will have about 2 or 3 videos per player, and I think it's just going to be fun, and definitely I can speak for myself. I'm going to do a lot of reading for some of the players that I don't know yet so much and research them, so I'm probably going to be enjoying that at least as you, maybe even more. Well, I hope not more. Well, the first player that I was thinking to start was Morphy. I don't know why Morphy was the first one that jumped into my head, but I was saying, all the world champions, we will have plenty of time to discuss Capablanca and Fischer and Kasparov and Karpov and current players and Carlsen and Anand and Kramnik. Okay, plenty. But which player in somewhat, reasonable time that we have games that we can record and go over is extremely exciting player that, deserve a spot here? I think Morphy is probably the first one. About 150, 160 years ago, started, playing chess at a decent level, was a child prodigy, very, very similar in the style of Capablanca. I mean, how he studied chess, nobody actually taught him. He had seen his father Father Alonso playing with his uncle, and his uncle was also a tiny bit important for his chess. He told him to go play important tournaments and so on. He had seen them playing, and just watching, the amazing part was that nobody thought he even understand anything, but after some time, he suddenly said, a game that finished in a draw, he suddenly said, hey, to his uncle, that he was winning. They thought that he was bluffing, and he put the pieces on the board, remembering how was the position, and showed them indeed that his uncle was winning. Okay, very similar to some Capablanca stories, how he started. And okay, ever since then, he started playing in New Orleans, where he was born in 1837. So by the age of 9, he was already one of the strongest players there. By the age of 12, 13, he was one of the strongest players in United States, and a few years after it, he traveled to Europe, which was, basically had a bigger chess center, and pretty much beat all the players there, other than, Stanton, that was considered maybe the top player in Europe, or one of them that, simply avoided playing a match with Morphy. So what about Morphy's chess? Well, many great ones consider him to be one of the first big positional players, although we don't really see that much in his game, just because he could simply attack his opponents and, win the games very rapidly. Many of the games he won in 20 moves, around 20 moves, like pretty much if it was boxing, I would say knockout on the second or third round at top. Those were most of the games, pretty much because the poor play by his opponent. I want to start with one of the most famous game, maybe the most famous game that he has played. It's a game that he played against the Count Isorad at the Italian Opera House in Paris. He played against the Duke Brunswick and the Count, and it is probably his most famous game. So let's start. Again, this was played in 1858, if I'm not mistaken, and we're going to see not high fashion theory. All right, this we can still accept. Take is a possible move. Bishop g4, not that great. Now, the interesting part is that one of the greatest players, for example, of the time, Har-Zvi, had a similar game when he played the match against Morphy in 1858. That was when Morphy had his big European tour at the age of 21, pretty much beating all European players. This is just I can say just a bad move, since after capture, I mean, not d5, but take. Yeah, black is already here in trouble. I mean, let's put it very simple. I mean, why is black in trouble? Because f7 is under attack, but white has another idea that we see in many openings, pretty much, many lines. The double attack against f7 and b7. Actually, if you just go to the video that I did before that, the last one in openings do not in the Scandinavian, there's a line that has this idea. All right, this is 157 years ago. All right, knight f6 was played. I mean, some suggestions is maybe that queen f6 is a better move. I mean, okay, it is a better move, keeping the pawn defended in a better way, and after queen b3, okay, of course white is much better, but okay, black is surviving alive and so on. Maybe white is just much better, maybe not really way more than that. But in the game, knight f6 was played, and okay, objectively I think that the game is pretty much finished already here. Now again, if there is something that we are going to see from Morphy games, is that basic tactics of, let's say, a level, I really think of a 2,000 player level, would have won huge amount of the games 150 years ago. Really, that's all that was. That was a lot at that time. Okay, queen e7 was played, and here an interesting choice. Of course, take is just a cool way, and all right, you don't need to be Magnus Carlsen or Kramnik or many others to win such a position. I mean, white is a pawn up, better structure, pair of bishops. I mean, any reason in the world to think white's gonna win. But very true to the knockout style that I just mentioned, right? I mean, if white plays queen takes b7, he's maybe going to win the game on the 8th round or something like that, maybe 6th round. But white played knight c3. Important to mention, by the way, that there was this tactical idea that would have won immediately, because now no way to exchange queens. But knight c3 was played. Okay. The game is very famous because of things that happened there. c6 is, I believe, somewhat corrected. Yeah. Objectively, knight c3 is a mistake. No, have no doubts about it. Knight c3 is a mistake. c6, I mean, it's getting to a better position from a pretty much completely won position. Bishop to g5, and here, okay, black has to do one simple thing, develop, and hopefully do that as fast as he can. The problem is that he doesn't really have any easy way to develop. White wants to castle. The ugly move, knight a6, might be only way, and after something like this, okay, black has a beautiful pawn structure, but okay, you know, if he will manage to exchange queens a little bit there, the pawn on c6 is the key. If the pawn is on c5, forget about it. Black just resigns if white can put the knight. I mean, also this position, I believe, is winning for white or close to that. But, well, b5 was played. Okay, black wants to kick the bishop, and then he can develop. So indeed, if white plays, let's say, a normal move such as bishop e2, believe it or not, black is at least okay here. Suddenly the queen is in a bad spot. Black has a great square on c5, but those are the basic tactics at that time. If you know the game, you know the game. If you don't, how should white continue? Well, knight takes b5, take, and long castle. Okay, it's a pretty simple game, as I mentioned. 2000 level tactics, but apparently 150 years ago that was high stuff, you know. Rook d8, and now basic chess about pins. There is a pin, we want to put more pressure, take, take. And okay, white has so many ways to win here. I mean, maybe if Morphy would have just taken on f6, yeah, it wouldn't be such an amazing game. He would just easily be winning the game, right? Nothing much to discuss. I mean, okay, this is checkmate. And all right, I mean, this is so winning, I don't even want to start discussing it. But Morphy did it in style, and apparently that was the high thing at that time. So, I've started with the most famous game of Morphy. I can sit here and tell you, whoa, what an amazing game. This is a game of super strong grandmaster and so on. No, it's a game that I think a decent expert should have played with white, maybe 2000 player, but that's how chess was at that time. Let's see another game that he played against one of the strongest players at that time. This game played by Morphy in his match against Adolf Andersen, a German chess master, which was one of the known players, I mean one of the strongest players in the 50s and 60s, well, not 1950, 1960, but 1850, 1860, and he was beaten quite seriously in the match against Morphy, just to demonstrate how strong Morphy was compared to pretty much any player at that time. And I mean, I forgot to mention in my introduction, basically he was the unofficial world champion, Morphy, maybe the first unofficial world champion, because he pretty much beat everyone in United States, he beat everyone in Europe, he beat Anderson. In a big match, he beat him with 7 wins, 2 losses and 2 draws, then some non-official match with 5 wins and 1 loss, so really beating most of the players with quite a big score. Well, let's see this game, and then we will continue with Morphy on our second video after this one. So, Sicilian. I mean, it might seem very popular, but pretty much at that time, as we will see in the other games, e5 was the automatic move, and then, all right, f4 or some Evans idea, you know, Evans variation, some sharp stuff was played, because going after the king was pretty much only way. But Sicilian was new weapons at that time. All right, playing this way, and actually this is decent theory. I mean, okay, it was played by, well, many strong players. No need to even start this guy mentioning all of them, including world champions and so on. Okay, c4 is a move. Bishop f4 is a logical move. We see this idea quite a lot, basically trying to provoke something in a Sveshnikov type. And indeed e5 is being played, bishop e3, and okay, this is a position that, okay, there are really endless amount of strong players that have been playing this. Anand, Morozevich, Svidler, I mean, Ivanchuk, Topalov, okay, really endless amount of players. But there are, I would say, 3 moves that are, well, really 2 moves that are being played, which is knight f8 or a6, and then, okay, bishop e6 and bishop e7 are also somewhat to be considered. Yet f5 was played by Anderson, and basically this move is almost losing. And let's see the big logic of Morphy. I mean, this is again 160 years ago, and why I said that some of the basic principles, logical play came from already from Morphy, because black is starting to be way behind in development. Instead of getting a piece out, such as knight f6, bishop e6, bishop e7, or a6 kicking the knight, each of those moves is okay, somewhat in the right direction, developing this, that. f5, no development. And no development, okay, this cannot be a right way. What is the logical way for white? Develop. Your opponent is underdeveloped, you have already some pieces out. That's the time to play fast, as played by Morphy. f4. I mean, okay. I read, I don't remember who said it. I pretty much remember that I've seen it in one of Jacob Haggard's books, but that when you play correct positional moves, 90% of the tactics will work out. Basically, you do the right things, tactics will be justified in 90%. I totally agree with that. For example, if a6 now, okay, white is done correctly, right? He is developed, he play fast. Well, he's not going to play knight a3, knight d5, and just winning. Remember, you put the pieces in the right spots. Tactics would work out. Alekhine said similar things, many great ones. So, f5, knight c3, f4. Okay, retreat? Not really. The other version of getting to c7. Knight to c7. It was possible also to play with the other knight. King f7 and okay, queen f3. I'm not certain it was 100% necessary to play this move. I don't think it's actually a mistake, but possibly just simple taking the rook would have been stronger. Just simply grabbing the rook. Okay, knight f6, and now, okay, very, very beautifully how Morphy is playing. Actually, this game I find to be much higher level than his most famous game, which was the previous one. For example, if take, oh no, white's in trouble here. But once again, developing faster pieces, faster at playing, that's how he's playing. Okay, I mean, what to do against the diagonal and all those things. I mean, bishop e6, just take. If the king goes, well, white can just take, because knight d4, we have this intermediate move. So knight d4 immediately was played. But, okay, here it turns out that Morphy can calculate a lot. Knight takes f6. Check. d5. Lots of complications. Lots of complications. Well, I mean, first of all, let's see what happens if not d5. For example, if the move king g6 would have been played, okay, white is just winning. Maybe not in the simplest way, but okay. Check. And okay, simple way is knight e8. Another, maybe a bit more fancy way is f4. Knight e8 is simple enough. So there is actually a simple approach here, but f4 was another way, not as easy. d5, gaining time, but not really changing white almost winning position. I say almost because after take, okay, this is not a resigning position for black. I mean, he can take on f2, and move the rook. Okay, white is a pawn up. Black has pair of bishops, but white has this outpost. Okay, of course it is big advantage for white, but not at all resignable position. Big advantage for white, not at all resignable. Another alternative, maybe a more appropriate one if black wants to fight, because, well, the other queen takes d5, the game is complicated, but black is suffering. I mean, the game is on, but he's suffering. King e7 is really a move that white is still way better, but keeps it so complicated that every tiny wrong move by white can make black be better. Queen h5, take. Okay, and for example, after check and take, white is way better. I can tell you that Mr. Computer is about +1 for white. Too complicated to analyze. That's the, we always joke. If you ask a grandmaster what is unclear in encyclopedia, means chess encyclopedia, in unclear or in a book, one can say, well, the position is complicated and so on, but most grandmasters honestly will tell you it means, well, the author was too lazy to analyze. So I'm saying white is much better and stopping there. But in the game, Anderson played king to g6, and this actually doesn't leave much to be discussed after queen h5. And now, as logical as possible, taking on e3. Now, this move is actually horrible. Horrible. There's no pawn on d6. Take, take, check. Okay, bye-bye game. Ouch. Horrible playing this way. And if queen f7, also, the king gets this square to retreat. Morphy played the simplest move in the position, developing opening lines, opening files against black king. How? Take. That's it. All these pieces pretty much are now taking part of the game. That's it. I mean, nothing other than just resigning for black in this position. Nothing other than resigning. I mean, okay, if g6, for example, well, some calculations are needed here, but castle is possible, also just this simple way. And, okay, white is just turning up to be really, really, really a lot of material up in this line. Anderson took on c2 just to resign after king e2. I wasn't joking when I mentioned, comparing it to box, that so many of the games were over by move 15, 20. I mean, like, wow. But this is a really amazing game, and his opponent was pretty much one of the very, very top players in the world. I started with some of his most impressive games. In our next video, I will show you actually some of the most famous combinations that I knew those combinations since, okay, I was a young kid, I've seen them, but only when preparing for this series, I really said, oh wow, this is from Morphy game. I didn't remember, or maybe I didn't know that, or maybe I knew that and already forgot. But so many of the most classical combinations that you see in puzzle books, well, we will see how many of them belong to Morphy, but that's going to be next time. Bye-bye.